So it has been great to actually kind of jump in and share that same passion with most of the people that come to these trainings and those people in our company. I'm going to turn it over to Anna and let her introduce herself to you guys.
Hi, everybody. Depending on where you are, some people it's still morning. It depends on if you're on the West Coast. If you're on the East Coast, like Adam, it's definitely afternoon. So I'm joining you from in the middle, Fort Worth, Texas. So I'm also a professional development educator here at PBIS Rewards, and I am joining you today from Fort Worth, Texas. So my education history is just kind of I taught sixth grade for quite a while. So then after I taught sixth grade, then I was an administrator for several years, but this is definitely my sweet spot for sure as far as my career goes. And we are so excited to be here with you today and going over this really important topic. Sometimes it gets overlooked is reteaching those expectations. But it is so important and it's so meaningful too when you go back over those expectations, how it really does help with your students and reinforcing what behaviors you're expecting from them, and then you'll see that over time come back to you. So it does take a little bit of time here as we come back from these breaks, but you'll definitely get it back in instructional time with your students. So thanks for being here.
Now, we always like to start our trainings off, much like we tell you guys in the classrooms, make sure you're going over those expectations on a day-to-day basis. And so every time we have a training, you're going to notice that we always kind of start with what are our expectations. And just like in our system, we ask that you be respectful, be responsible, and be safe. So keep your microphones muted when you're not sharing, and be open to some new ideas. We're going to talk about some things, give you some ideas of ways you can reteach these expectations. So be open to those ideas that we present to you. Try to only have PBIS rewards content up on your screen and keep your device silenced if at all possible. Share the air. There are several of us in here. If at any point you want to share anything with us, maybe we're talking about something and you have a great idea, something that worked well at your school, by all means, feel free to kind of chime in, unmute, and share that experience that you might have with some of the other participants we have here in this training. And again, as far as being safe is concerned, stay engaged. We do have those nonverbal feedback icons that are available to you through Zoom. So feel free to use those. And above all, please, please, please don't be afraid to ask any questions. There's only a small number of us in here today. I think we have 8 of us total. So by all means, if you have any questions, feel free to unmute and ask those questions as they come up. If you're more comfortable, you could also place that there in the chat. We call that the parking lot quite frequently. So, again, if you have any questions, feel free to post those there in the chat or unmute, whichever you're more comfortable doing. We do want to show you our training agenda for today. So we're going to begin obviously with a little welcome, letting you know a little bit about who we are. And then we're going to start discussing some of those data-driven decisions that you're going to be making, those points by expectation reports, those referrals by expectation, really just drilling into that data and figuring out what areas need some improvement from the previous semester moving into this new semester. Then we're going to talk about that school-wide matrix. Maybe you need to refine that matrix. Maybe we need to reteach some things from that matrix. And then also talk a little bit about that virtual matrix modification. We are aware that as this Omicron variant kind of is becoming more and more of a hassle here in the world, that some schools are moving back to virtual. And so we do want to prepare you for that and give you some ideas in case that does happen. Then we're going to review that lesson plan template with you and a planning guide, where we're just going to share that template and give you some suggestions of what you can do moving forward. And then, of course, a behavior reinforcement schedule. We're going to talk specifically about that behavior specific praise and building some behavioral independence for your students. And then we're going to end it with some reflections and some wrap-ups, show you guys our Facebook user group and invite you to that. And of course, ask you to complete a little survey for us to let us know how we're doing in our training sessions. So why do we reward and why are we reteaching these expectations? So as I said before, it's important that we kind of treat January in much the same way you treat August. Students as they leave you and go home for a period of time, we've got to understand that oftentimes the structure that we have in our classrooms or in our schools is very different than that structure that they have at home. So first things first, you want to actively teach students what behaviors are expected to them. And we can't come in assuming that students know those expectations or that they know these behaviors. So take some time and really practice those behaviors with them. Just like in August, when you start the school year, you should give your students some time to really practice the procedures that you have in place and what expectations you have there for your kiddos. You want to also give them that time in January to really practice those procedures. So if you want your students to, come into the classroom and sharpen their pencil in the first 2 minutes, give them time to practice that. Make sure to remind them of that when they first come in that first week of January as well. Next, we want to talk about increasing the likelihood that students are going to engage in appropriate behaviors. Of course, the more we talk about those expectations and we give them opportunities to practice, they're going to see how important that is to you. So again, make sure that you're really engaging students in those appropriate behaviors and making sure that they really understand those through practice and again discussions about that matrix that you guys use. Next, you also want to talk about increasing the opportunity to build adult-student relationships. Guys, I can't tell you how important that relationship piece is. And that's going to also come back to help as well with that curriculum piece. I can tell you as a classroom teacher, I was very involved with my kids. They really knew that Mr. E cared about them and Mr. E wanted them there at school on a day-to-day basis. And because of those positive relationships that I had built, students worked so much harder for me in my classroom, whether we were discussing, the content of my curriculum, or if we were talking about behavior. Kids can always see how much you care about them. They can always see if that relationship is important to you. So stress that to your staff members. Make sure that you're really driving using those relationships to meet your fullest potential as a teacher. Next, we want to tell you to encourage students to demonstrate positive social emotional skills and behaviors. That self component became very popular last year as our students went home. Many teachers were concerned about, are our kids doing okay? Are they getting that support at home? And so with the addition of that self component, we also want you to know that it's important to push those skills with your students even now, helping them to understand how to identify what emotion they're feeling, whether that's anger or happiness, or if they're calm, or maybe they're stressed, but just really making sure they understand those cell components and make sure that you teach those cell components that are in your system. So if you use those cell checks in the PBIS reward system, make sure that your students understand those expectations and that they can identify whether they're feeling stressed, calm, happy, or what have you. And finally, you want to create a positive school climate and culture. And I mean, that's really the purpose of PBIS and PBIS rewards, is to really assist in helping keep that school climate and that culture in a positive light for your students and your staff members. We oftentimes talk about our students, but we also have to remember, especially right now, with the weather changes going on and this new COVID variant, a lot of schools are experiencing sicknesses and staff shortages and things of that nature. So, small little things you can do to really help to promote a more positive culture during times like this. So we reteaching these expectations would be a big help for that.
Okay, so when we are talking about making that connection with PBIS and PBIS rewards, if you've been to our trainings before, a lot of times we use this graphic and we really talk about the advantages of PBIS rewards. But today we're really going to focus on this one area, which is data and reporting. because this is a great way to really make sound decisions for PBIS and PBIS rewards as far as your implementation and facilitating those decisions that you make based on that data. And so we're going to walk you through how to do that in our system. And then those are the same steps you can take when you're reviewing your own data. Whoop, I have to spin that again. All right, Adam, let's talk about some reports.
All right. So as Anna just told you, anything we do in education should be supported by should be data driven, right? Anything we're doing, whether that's, making some improvements to our curriculum or our content delivery, or even these the behaviors of our students. And so one of the things you really want to focus on here is looking at the reports that are available to you through PBIS Rewards. So if you're logged into the system on the left-hand side there's going to be an option that has reports there. And depending on, your role at the school, if you have admin privileges or not, it's really going to determine what you can see there. But certainly when you're meeting with your PBIS team, or when you are discussing this in a PLC or something of that nature, you really want to look at the data points. So we're going to put up a little screenshot here for you. And I want you guys to really look at this data and see if there's any information you can pull from this. Specifically looking at that daily points awarded section. When you look at that, what do we notice? Can you either unmute or put it there in the chat and tell me, what do you see from that data? We're going to help you out a little bit here. If you look where it says daily points awarded, you can see that we have grade level 6, grade 7, and grade 8 there. So looking here at this chart, great. Somebody said grade 8 has a lot of points. Very good. So we know grade 8 is really pushing, passing out, they're giving out those points, and helping our kiddos kind of meet those expectations there. What grade level do we notice is struggling there? And thank you for your answer there, Wallace. Thank you, Brian, as well. So we can see grade 7 is not giving out any points. Okay, so that lets the PBIS team or the administrator know that maybe we need to have a meeting with our 7th grade teachers to discuss how to give out points. Oftentimes, it could just be that the teachers don't understand how to give out those points. Maybe it's that they need a little bit more assistance kind of getting all this going. So again, when we look at these different data points, and these reports, it really helps us to kind of drill down a little bit deeper in the data and to determine if there is some areas that we need to improve on, either as a school or as a PBIS team. You also have over here on the right hand side some of what we call your favorites, and you can certainly go in and favorite any reports that you see so that those pop up. Obviously, if you're an administrator, you're really going to be looking at those referrals, making sure that those are staying in line. And of course, if you're a classroom teacher, maybe you want to focus a little bit more on what points have been awarded and focusing on those points. But nonetheless, all of these reports that are in there are put there to help you drive decision making with your PBIS team and really focus on what your team feels needs to happen at your school.
So let's kind of dive a little bit deeper with some of these reports that Adam kind of got us started with. So when we are looking in PBIS rewards at those points by expectation, when we pull that data here, we can see that even if I'm just looking at the points that are given away today, what's something that y'all may notice with this data? Here we have each of ours. It may be really hard to read. This says respect, responsible, and safety at the bottom. I know sometimes if you're looking at it on a smaller laptop, those letters get really tiny. Is there anyone that notices anything about the data that we see here? And you can unmute, you don't have to type it. Yep, Ashley, for sure. We have no points for safety, right? Nobody's giving out anything for safety. So when we're thinking about things that are going on right now in schools, what are some great examples of ways to give out points for safety? What can we incentivize our students with and our staff, and we give them reminders about, oh, wearing a mask, definitely. That is a big one. So when we are looking at these reports, it really gives us a great idea. And this is the same kind of data walk that you could do with your staff. Adam, the couple of things here: social distancing, walking to and from settings. Oh, hands to ourselves in line. Mary, maybe you're with some younger friends, or you know what, sometimes middle schoolers and our secondary friends have the same struggles. Doesn't have to be our young ones. Yep, no horseplay. That's a good one, Brian, for sure. So those would be some good reminders that those are great ways to give those points for our students. They're earning those, and we need to remember that as we are giving those points out.
And also want to say to you guys, don't be scared, especially in an example like this. Like, you can see that your staff's done a great job at giving out points for respect. They've done a great job at giving out points there for respect, for responsibility. Don't be scared to tell your staff, look, this week we're going to all focus on safety. So make sure we're giving out plenty of points for safety, because a lot of times they just need to get more comfortable passing out points for safety and seeing that it, and that's always a questionable thing. Like, where do we get points for safety? How do we give out points for safety? And once you start to give them some ideas, like, well, when your kids are wearing their mask, give them some points. When your kids are staying with social distancing, give them some points. When they're staying behind those plexiglass desks that they have there, give them some points. Those are all ways that they can get points. And by focusing on that for a week or so, you're really allowing your staff to see different ways that they can award those points. And in the following weeks, you'll start to see that trend continue to go up.
Yes. Yeah. So it's kind of like Adam was saying, it's kind of like a blitz. You're really focusing on that too. And you'll see your students really make an effort with that as well. All right, let's look at another one. All right, so now we're looking at major problem behaviors. So if you're utilizing our advanced referral system, it is so fantastic because it really gives you great data to drill down and look at what's going on, not only at your campus, but also at the student level. And so I'm going to help you a little bit here. So our number one issue on this one, because the type gets really small, is repeated minor referrals. And so that is really our issue that we need to look at. And so then as the PBIS lead, then we need to go drill down even more and look at those minor referrals and see what are the issues with those minor referrals. We can see everything else, all these other categories are really pretty slight. There's hardly any. But if I drill down even more to that minor problem behavior, if I look at this one, I can see, wow, this has a huge line on the graph over there on the left-hand side. That's disruptive behaviors. And so I can see I have a couple of other issues here, maybe a little excessive talking and not following directions. But PBIS rewards will also let you drill down to specific students. So then I can see, okay, where are my students that are having those issues? And I can actually drill down and look at those specific students and see, are there teachers that they are having success in their classroom and then not in other classrooms? And so getting some ideas about what works well for that student and what doesn't. So this can go down to that student level, but you can also look at it as a global level at your campus to see what needs to be done when you are doing that major reteach as we kind of come back from each of those breaks. So hopefully that gives you some insight into kind of how you can drill down as an example with some of our reports that we offer. All right.
next we're going to kind of go into our school-wide matrix and expectations. So we all as educators generally do a pretty good job in August of really focusing on that matrix. And Anna and I were talking before you guys joined us in here today about how a lot of times we are very cognizant that we got to review that matrix in August and even going into September. And we always kind of link students' behaviors back to that. So for example, when your kids come back from the bathroom, that's a great time to really point to the matrix and say, boys and girls, you did a great job today getting into the bathroom and getting out, walking in the hallway correctly and getting back to our classroom safely. So, that's a great time to point out those expectations that are in your matrix. But we want to remind you that even as you're going into January, February, even March and April, we always want to link back to that matrix, as that matrix is our guiding structure for our expectations. And so by doing that, you're doing two things. One, you're forcing your students to kind of look at that matrix and understand it a little bit more. A lot of times our kids see that matrix in schools, and especially our younger kiddos in K2, they really don't understand what is the purpose of that matrix. And by linking back to that, linking their behaviors to that matrix, and then to giving them some points, you really start to kind of set some fires off in their brains to say, oh, okay, so I'm getting a point because I'm following this expectation, and this expectation is here in my matrix. So don't be scared to pull that matrix up and display that to your classroom. And I mean, I've even seen some people that do great things like with upper grade levels where they talk about what are some ways your class should have earned some points in the hallway right then. So always bring back some connections to that school-wide matrix. As you can see here on the screen, it's talking about why. Why are we seeing these behaviors? What is the function behind behaviors that you see in the school? It's oftentimes we got to really think about that, especially when we're getting some behaviors that are less than desirable, I would say. Make sure that you really focus on why are those behaviors happening? Are your students trying to get your attention? Are they trying to get the attention of their peers? Do they not want any attention at all? You really want to look at why that's happening. And then we want to focus a little bit on what expectations are important. What do I need to focus on? So just like you guys told me a moment ago when we were looking at that data, we saw lots of points were given out for respect and responsibility, but no points were giving out for safety. That lets me know if I'm a PBIS team lead or if I'm on the PBIS team, that kind of shows me that we need to focus more on that specific expectation. And as I said before, we don't want you to be scared to really stop and focus on that for a few days or even a week if you need to, because that is the purpose of this program. Then we want to talk about when do you explicitly reteach. So in general, and a general rule of thumb, you want to always reteach your expectations anytime those kids are gone for an extended break. Now, depending on what grade levels you are teaching, that break might be a couple of days off of school, or it could be, a week out of school. I can tell you, I've got friends that teach in New York, and lately New York has been having a lot of snow and several different snow days. So you can imagine that this week, as kids are coming back to school from the several days they missed last week, this is an awesome time for teachers to reteach those expectations. Because again, anytime you go a day or two without school, you've got to remember that the structures we have in place at our school are very different than the structures that those students have at home. And even if you have a kid at home that may or be used to those kind of structures, it's very different. I'll give you a good example. I have an 8th grade son. My son is very used to structure here at home. But the structure I have at home is probably different than what they're doing in their classrooms. So I can imagine when he goes back to school, he's having to relearn some expectations that he might have forgot about from the previous semester. So just make sure that you're reteaching those things. Coming back from a weekend, I always told my teachers Monday's a reminder day. You always want to remind your kiddos, we're back in school. The weekend was great, but now it's time to buckle down, focus on these expectations, and let's learn. And then finally, how often do we reteach and what delivery method are you going to use? Are you going to use a blitz schedule that like Anna was talking about, where we're going to focus on one expectation per day? Are you going to focus on expectations per week? That's just something that you need to sit down and discuss with your PBIS team or administrators, just to kind of figure out exactly what you're going to do. Are you going to have some kind of lesson delivery, or are you just modeling those behaviors? Lots of schools create little videos and pep and things of that nature to do like pep rallies in the beginning of the school year. Don't be scared to show some of those videos right now. Remember, kiddos like to see us act silly as teachers. It's a nice reminder that we are human. You would be surprised how many kids probably think you live at that school. And if you're like me as an administrator, I felt like I lived there anyway. So just, be careful that we're reteaching exactly those expectations to our students, and that our delivery method is fluid. So I want to let's look at this matrix right here. And in just a moment, you're gonna see that there is a column here that says remote. Can we all see that there on the right-hand side? Thank you, Anna, for pointing that out to everyone. But you want to make sure that when you have this matrix up, that this is not just something that sits in your classroom and is never discussed. And oftentimes we hang stuff up in our classroom because it was a directive from higher up. We want to see what your objective is. We want to see what content you're delivering today. Please put the date on the board, right? We already have all these directives. And so sometimes things like matrices and school rules and things of that nature, they kind of get lost in the mesh of everything, right? So you really want to spend some time focusing on that, especially during what I like to call teachable moments, right? So when your kiddos are in there, and let's say that little Johnny keeps taking his mask off, that's a good time to just point out, all right, everyone, I want to remind you that a part of being safe here at school is wearing our mask. And you're doing two things here. One, you're reminding Johnny, hey, Johnny, we need to be wearing our mask, without calling Johnny out, right? So now you've made it a classroom discussion point. I do also want, like I said, I want to focus a little bit on this remote section here. So let's pull out a little bit of that so that you can see it a little better. As we move into virtual environments, and some of your kiddos are maybe at home already, then we want to focus on what is important for your kids to do in that remote environment. For example, we want them to be on time, right? Obviously, if they're in a remote setting, a lot of them don't have parents at home that are pushing that, or maybe mom or dad works third shift, and so they're doing their very best just to get in and get their child awake for school. So be focused on that, and be cognizant that everyone's not in a situation where they can be there every second of the time that you're working with those kids, especially at the younger grade levels. Talk to them about preparing their technology. What does that look like? Talk about the importance of keeping themselves muted. I can't tell you, and just so you all know, I was definitely working during COVID, and I can't tell you how many times I could hear all kinds of background noise coming from my students' laptops because they didn't mute themselves. And, some of them have little brothers and sisters, and I can hear instruction going on in kindergarten. I can hear instruction going on in fourth grade, so just really making sure they understand the importance of muting themselves. Maybe you want to talk about wearing headphones. But one of the biggest things we see here, it says remove distractions. And that has to be one of the biggest pieces. If you remember this from March of last year, how many times, guys, did kiddos have a TV on, and instead of focusing on the teacher, they're watching the TV? It goes back to kind of what we said to you guys at the beginning, kind of focus on the content we're delivering here and keep PBIS rewards content up. Reminding your students to do that is important as well. And then also, as you kind of go through this matrix, you want to look at data to spotlight and reconnect to that matrix. So as we said before, looking at those reports, we could see that safety was not something that was really being looked at. So, I would dive deeper into each of those areas down on that bottom row there to make sure my students really understand what needs to happen in the hallway, what needs to happen in the restroom, what needs to happen on the bus. A lot of schools right now are experiencing bus shortages or bus drivers are getting sick. I was telling Anna, my son's school, which usually has 10 bus drivers, yesterday had one bus driver to show up because of sickness going on. And so y'all need to have contingencies in place for when those kind of things happen. So like my son last night got home from school, and usually he's home by 3:45 or so. He ended up getting home last night about 6:30 from the bus because of these things going on. So just be weary of that. Make sure that you're relating back to this matrix when we're going over those expectations and looking at the reports that are available to you through the PBIS reward system.
Okay, so next, after you have decided which areas you're going to focus on by looking at those reports and digging into that data, now we're going to talk about the lesson planning and really setting apart that time for your school with a calendar. So we are going to give you this template here, and this is a great way just to write some real basic lesson plans to focus on one expectation per day. And this is a great way for departments to get together or grade levels to get together to write these grade level or department lesson plans focusing on those expectations. And these can be short lessons. They just maybe need to be 10 minutes, 15 minutes maximum, and utilize those same instructional tools that you have to teach this instruction. So when we talk about academics, we're going to use that same type of thing when we talk about behavior. So, using things like a Venn diagram or role playing or examples and non-examples, those are really easy to implement. And it doesn't matter if you're working with 5-year-olds or 18-year-olds, they're going to understand that very easily, and we can make that work at their level. And so I'm talking about those expectations and just planning that out so that we do have consistency as well as far as information that we are all going to be discussing with those expectations. It really makes a huge difference. And then again, we are reinforcing those expectations through our matrix and going back over that with our students. So everybody is on the same page as to what those expectations are across our entire campus and school wide. So that little bit of time really does pay you back as you go. So if you also have staff members that are concerned about grades, there are lots of ways that you can make these assignments do double duty for you, and you can take those as grades. So it's really easy, and there's a variety of lessons that can be done this way as well. So when you're planning that schedule out, really set aside some intentional time to reteach those expectations and use your data so you know exactly where you need to focus. If safety isn't your huge concern right now, then don't worry about that. If you're having fights in your building every day, well, then you might need to work on those expectations that are in line more with respect and responsibility. So really spend your time on what's going to get you the most bang for your buck as well. So like Adam has said, those first couple days coming back after break, those are a great time. If you've already had a couple days coming back after break, no worries. Just when you have that time to set that apart and just say, okay, just for 10 minutes at the beginning of each class, or if you're in more of an elementary setting, sometimes those teachers that have morning meetings, this is a great way to incorporate that. If you're with more of a secondary class, when your students have an advisory, that's a great time also for students to have those types of lessons during that time. So all students should receive those lessons from all their teachers so they really understand that it doesn't matter what setting you're in, all those expectations apply there. So you can kind of see this schedule as we're looking across that week. We're working with one expectation each day. And so the ones that you really want to reinforce, those you may come back to later on in the week, especially if you have a small amount of expectations like we do with PBIS rewards. Ours are respect, responsibility, safety. But the campus that I taught at before, ours went with the word pride. So we actually had 5 and it worked out perfect, 1 per day. So think about what would work best as far as things for your campus. And by getting your teachers involved in that lesson planning schedule, that also builds that buy-in with your teachers. They have a part of that as well. They don't just feel like this is a lesson being handed to them. They have some skin in that game, so that that's also a lesson that they want to present to their students. Adam, thanks for those links over there in the chat too.
No problem. And also, guys, while we're talking about that, we're moving into this behavior specific praise. Remember that if I'm a teacher on campus, and let's say I teach 4th grade reading, right? And Anna is the music teacher on campus. It's important that every teacher on your campus follows this same kind of lesson plan schedule, because what will end up happening is, students will come to my class and they can see, well, Mr. E is focusing a lot on making sure we understand respect, responsibility, and safety. But then they go to Anna's class and Anna's not discussing all of that. Those kids are going to quickly see that, well, she doesn't care about PBIS. She doesn't care about PBIS rewards, so it's important to make sure that you are really pushing that schedule to every person on your campus. One of the great things, one of the slides we shared with you earlier was why PBIS rewards. And one of the wonderful things about this program is that everyone on campus is able to give points to students. Everyone can be involved in this program. And we really want everyone to be involved. So be sure that you push that even to your resource teachers, your teacher assistants, your counselors. Everyone should be focusing on this during this week. Even the principal, it's a good time. They're doing announcements that week. Really talk about some examples of respect during those announcements in the morning that week. And I'm not saying do that all throughout the school year. I mean, if you can, awesome. I would certainly do that. But at least during these like blitz schedules, you want to make sure that you're really focusing on that, because when it comes from higher up, when the kids see that the principal cares, the teachers care, the support staff cares, they start to see that there's no real way to wiggle out of that, right? So really focus on making sure that is consistent across your whole campus.
But I think that also is a great way to incentivize our kids too. So like on Monday, when we talk about respect, we're going to make it rain points for respect. And so Adam is giving that great example too. Your principal can give points for respect, really focusing on that day, being out and about in the building, perhaps, or your cafeteria workers or your bus drivers or your teachers. And so students are really making those connections that when we talk about those things, we're going to acknowledge you also for following those expectations. So really being very intentional about that.
So now let's talk a little bit about that behavior specific praise. So guys, anytime you're giving out points, obviously we're trying to praise our students, right? But when you give them points, let's always refer back to that matrix. Like if I'm giving out points to my students for coming back to the classroom safely, I'm going to tell them, boys and girls, you did a great job walking in the second block with your hands behind your back, an amazing job getting back to our classroom safely. I'm going to give everyone a point for safety right now. Always being very specific about what those points are for. It just reminds the kiddos that, hey, I earned this, a lot of times kids ask, I'm sure you've heard this before, why'd you give me that grade? Kids, we don't give you grades, you earn your grade, right? And in much the same way, they are earning their points in PBIS rewards, and we want our students to know that. So then you want to kind of think about that behavior reinforcement schedule. And you're going to hear this a lot from your teachers. Am I supposed to give them points every day? Yes, yes, you are. You want to give them points for doing exactly what you want them to do, right? That is kind of the point of PBIS rewards, that we're continuing to give them points for doing what they're supposed to. And I love the little image we have here on the right, because you can see we've got a lot of different companies there that also have some kind of a point structure. I have to tell you, I'm a big Harris Teeter guy. I would be so upset if one day they were like, "Oh, you're not going to get the points today because we gave you so many points yesterday." That is not the way those point structures work. We want to make sure our kids are continuing to be reinforced with those incentives. And next, you want to talk about that behavior specific praise. Give them an observable behavior and then something, an I feel statement to kind of go with it. So, like, for example, Anna's done a great job today paying attention. I feel that Anna is really focused on my instruction and is being very responsible. It's and some of us guys, you got to be careful because some kids are not used to that kind of praise, right? They don't get that at home. So if you notice that a kid seems uncomfortable with that, just use it a little bit more every day and get them more comfortable with those I feel statements. We also are aware that some teachers are not as comfortable with those I feel words either. So we're going to give you a little list of some I feel words that you can use here. So like if you're in elementary school, talking about, I feel happy or I feel respected, I feel good. If you're in a middle school or high school, of course, you can, I feel appreciated, I feel unique, I feel impressed, making sure that your students really understand those. So that's kind of like a vocabulary lesson that you get to kind of build into PBIS rewards. Next, we want to show you this behavior reinforcement schedule. So you can see here week 1, and Anna kind of showed you this a moment ago. Week 1, Monday and Tuesday, we're really going to focus on reteaching and acknowledging that matrix with respect. And then we're going to do responsibility the next 2 days, and then safety that final day. Looking at our data that we showed you a moment ago, maybe you would want to do safety for a couple more days, and then these others, maybe 1 day each. Or as Anna said, maybe your expectations are, pride. So you have 5 days. So each day can be dedicated to one expectation. Then as you move into that second week, you can kind of target that reinforcement a little bit more. So for example, if you were in a virtual environment, our focus can be, let's focus on staying on mute this week, right? Or maybe let's focus on removing distractions this week, and making sure that the only content up is school content. So again, realize that all of this is completely customizable and should be tailored based on the data provided to you from your school in the PBIS reward system. And then as you can see, going on to week 3, you can see that we've got some gray boxes and black boxes there, just to kind of show you that even though we're moving on to some new tasks there, we're still bringing up those old tasks because we don't want our students to start to kind of forget that. And as you move into that final week, week 4, you're going to start to see that we're adding a little bit more and continuing to discuss what was discussed the week prior to. So by the time we hit the end of this 4th week, we have discussed several different components there, and we've given our kids time to really focus and dive in to those specific behaviors. So now let's kind of wrap up and discuss some helpful resources we want to provide you guys moving forward as you're reteaching expectations in your school. So first and foremost, we want to talk about that show me how option that you have there. At the bottom of the PBIS rewards screen, you're always going to see something there that says show me how. When you click on that show me how, it's going to populate a box that looks something like this, where you can go in and you can click on create a raffle, and the system will literally walk you through step by step and tell you to click here, do this, do that. And so it's very intuitive in that way, so that it really helps you to kind of figure out what you need to do in the system. You can also type your question in there. So let's say I want to know about how to complete a cell check-in. I could type in cell or cell check-in. And again, it's going to populate those little black boxes that are going to take me through the system and show me exactly what to do. If you're someone that's like, oh no, that's not helpful for me, I need a little bit more help, there is a nice little panic button up at the top, or what we like to call a panic button. And it's just a help button for you. And when you click on that help button, that'll take you to our support page. Our support page looks something like this. Where it has plenty of guides and frequently asked questions. And then, of course, there are some videos there for you that you can certainly use to kind of train your staff, or even some videos in there for student features as well. And then there's that Learn series that goes into our Explore series, where it really dives deep into some different foundational skills in PBIS Rewards, such as that ARS system, or check-in, check-out, or maybe how you're going to use stores in your school. Also, from that support page, there's also an option there that says chat with PBIS Rewards. That'll connect you with someone on our support page, someone on our support team that is a real person, everybody. We get asked that question all the time. Is that a real person, or is that a robot? That is a real person that is talking to you. And of course, if you would like a different way to kind of communicate with them, they also have a phone number at the bottom of that support page. I put the link for the support page there for you in the chat as well, guys. But again, if you scrolled all the way down to the bottom, there is a phone number in case you'd rather speak with someone directly rather than do all this electronically via email and chat.
And we would love to invite you to our Facebook user group that we call the Facebook break room, or PBIS Rewards break room. And so this is a great way to make connections with other users of PBIS Rewards and get ideas from them. We have people ask questions all the time. Let's say, how do you set up your store? Or people may ask about, what are some school-wide events that you have available for your students right now? So this is a really great place for that. This is also where we take our newest ideas to this group, and it's about 1,500 people right now. So we would love for you to join us. We're going to put that, Adam has already put the link in the chat for you. So you can click that, or you can scan that QR code there on the page. But we would love for you to join us and stay connected with us there. There are 3 real basic questions to ask or to answer once you get there. But once you do that, you'll be right in with us.
And guys, please be sure that you answer all 3 of those questions. We have to say this all the time. When you don't answer all 3 of the questions, a lot of times we'll deny that request, and we'll tell you, please resubmit and answer all 3 of the questions. Make sure you answer all 3 questions so that the system will automatically let you into the PBIS Rewards break room. And again, like Anna said, they're super simple questions for you.
All right, and we also want to remind you, now you probably already are looking at our training calendar, that it is up now for January, but we're going to continue to add additional information coming up for February and March. So be looking for that as well. Our office hours, we have some this week. We have them tomorrow, actually. And then we have also some office hours later in January. We have those twice a month. And that is a great time to take about 20 minutes to meet with our PBIS Rewards trainers. It might be Adam and I, or India and Terrell, and we will help you problem solve something. We can talk you through different things. We can go through trainings with you. It's just a great time to set aside that just for you. And those are available, like I said, twice a month, and it's absolutely free. So we would love for you to join us on office hours if you have any specific questions that we can help you with. So all of those are available also there on the training calendar. And then this is our link to the resources. Thanks, Adam. So everything that we've talked about today can be found here at this link, including the PowerPoint that we talked about today, a recording, and then all the other resources that we talked about, like the lesson plan template, that kind of thing. Everything can be found here for you. It's kind of a one-stop shop. There are also other sessions that we have offered here on this link as well. So please make sure you explore those. Everything on that link is free. So we definitely want you to take advantage of all of those things that we have put out there for everybody, and really hope that those are things that are helpful to you and help you with your PBIS Rewards journey. And then finally, we just want to say thank you so much for joining us today. We've had a really great time talking about the importance of reteaching those expectations, and hopefully you've been able to have some insights about utilizing the data and then moving that into practice when you plan your lessons and your calendar of intentional time, setting that aside to really work with your students and your staff, making sure that we circle back around to those topics of expectations, making sure we're all on the same page. Adam and I would love for you to give us a little bit of feedback with our survey there. You can scan that with your phone, or Adam put the link there. It's really short. It's maybe like 5 or 6 questions. But we so appreciate you being here today. We know there are 1,000 things that you could be doing, and your time is definitely precious. So thank you so much. And if you need us, I'm going to put our email also in the chat for you to reach out to us. Adam and I are happy to help with anything with you as far as PBIS and PBIS rewards. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. We got you out a couple minutes early too.
Look at that.
So thanks everybody. Y'all have a great one.
Enjoy the rest of your semester, everyone. And again, as Anna said, Happy New Year, guys.
Yes, thank you.